Hello, this is Storm Warden coming back at you today with another video. And today we're going to talk about or give an overview of Hurricane Francine. We're going to talk about, how my forecast verified, and we're going to go through the factors because I want to start a tradition on this channel. After every big storm, we do an overview of our forecast, and I give you an overview of my forecast and how it verified, so that as I'm learning and as I'm fine tuning my forecast, you guys are learning with me. So that my whole goal is as I'm working through this, you guys are seeing it in real time. So what we're gonna do today is go over the factors, how my forecast verified, and some other factors that played into the storm, and how it basically just how it went through in Louisiana. Um, and then briefly towards the end of the video, I'll probably talk about that 30% area right off the coast of the Carolinas that could develop into a subtropical or tropical storm, but that's only a 30% chance. So more than likely that'll be a heavy rainmaker for us early next week. If I don't get to it today, I will certainly give you guys a video update on that tomorrow. But without further ado, if you've been liking my weather content, please subscribe. Again, I bring you guys daily weather updates. Unless I just simply can't, I will always try to keep you guys informed and warned of any upcoming big storms. So I'm giving you a first look at satellite, and this is now a tropical depression. It made landfall as a Cat 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 100 miles an hour. But it weakened fairly fast due to dry air and wind shear, which is pretty much my forecast. Is I thought this would make landfall. Granted, early on in my forecast, I thought this was going to be on the higher end guidance, low end Cat 3. It only made landfall as a low end category 2, so that's where I went wrong with the strength wise. But it seems like it was rapidly intensifying yesterday. The closer it got, it seemed like the more it was intensifying. And then as soon as it made landfall, you had that wind shear over top that pretty much teared apart the core, which allowed that sneaky dry air from the west to basically destroy the whole western to the southern side of this storm. Which you can see that right here. I mean, the whole southern side of the storm is completely bare of any precipitation due to that dry air. So overall, in that aspect, my forecast pretty much verified. I didn't verify though with the strengthening of this system. That's where I was wrong at. So that's where I'm as I'm learning, you guys are learning with me. So how everything verified though, I mean, the areas that got hit the hardest are pretty much the areas that I circled yesterday, from Slidell to New Orleans to Houma, Louisiana. These areas were the areas that got hit hardest, including West Gulfport even got hit pretty hard. So generally, the areas that I highlighted yesterday were hit the hardest. You even had a couple 3 to 4 inch, maybe 5 to 6 inch reports up here near Jackson to Meridian, Mississippi. So I'll say in that aspect, my forecast also verified because rainfall totals were quite hefty. That's particularly in the areas that I highlighted yesterday, from about West Gulfport down to Houma, Louisiana, and even from Baton Rouge to Lafayette. You had some pretty good rain, but you see that sharp gradient, sharp cutoff back near Lake Charles, and parts of eastern Texas and Alexandria, where you had less rainfall totals compared to your areas further to your south and to your east. So in that aspect, rainfall totals were highest to just to the east of the track. But as you had that dry air come in and basically destroy the southern side and the western side of this storm, that pretty much cut down on rainfall totals over near Lake Charles and Alexandria, Louisiana, and eastern Texas as well. So overall, the forecast pretty much verified in the aspect of where I highlighted the greatest areas of concern, and that pretty much panned out. The greatest areas of concern got hit the hardest, which is pretty well forecast by the National Hurricane Center as well. These areas were highlighted to be in the worst impact, and they got the worst impact. So props to the National Hurricane Center there. Now, So I'm gonna take you back through earlier model runs because I generally agree with the HMO model and the H8FSB model. I generally like these two models and the representation of this storm. You know, earlier this week though, one thing that I think was a little bit under forecast about the models is how that gyre would be a little bit more significant earlier in its life. That's something that I think models struggled with a little bit. Because I truly believe that had this system formed a tighter, more compact core like it did yesterday once it made landfall, I generally think that we would have been looking at a much higher end storm yesterday. Granted, we still saw major damage. We still saw a low end category 2 hurricane. So I don't want to dismiss that, but this thing could have been a category 3 had it formed a more tight compact core earlier on in its life. I think one of the saving grace in this systems is that, you know, the dry air was a little more significant early on in its life, which allowed for this core to pretty much stay more broad. And when you have a broader core and a more wider core, what's going to end up happening is just a lot more susceptible to drier intrusions. And so that's what we were seeing early on in its life, which pretty much didn't allow this thing to really start RI, which is rapidly intensify, until it got closer to land, which is pretty much what happened yesterday. You had rapidly intensification the closer this got to landfall, which is my forecast. I generally believe that this thing would have rapidly intensified right up to landfall and then rapidly decay very quickly as that dry air wrapped in on its backside. And then you had wind shear over top, which pretty much decayed this all the way to a tropical depression, which it is right now. So, you know, my forecast was that this was going to be a low end category 3 hurricane at landfall. I had to switch that up later on in the week. So yesterday, I actually forecasted this to landfall as a low end Cat 2, and it did. But my earlier forecasts were definitely wrong. I said this would be a low end Category 3. It was a low end Cat 2. And generally, I believe that happened, based on what I'm seeing, is because this core wasn't able to really sustain itself. It wasn't tight, it wasn't compact. So it really wasn't stable. When you don't have a stable core, a stable low level circulation, you're going to be susceptible to drier intrusions all throughout its life. And that's pretty much what happened with Francine. This would have been a much bigger storm, guys, had drier intrusions not basically killed its core early on. This thing really didn't get going until like yesterday as it got closer to landfall. And then by that point, you just had timing issues. I mean, you get a storm that's like that far, that's that close to the coast. It doesn't have that much longer before it makes landfall, and then obviously it weakened fairly quickly as you had dry air and you had wind shear over top. Half at H8FSB model generally showed the exact same of my thoughts that I was thinking. It showed that Trone Cat 2 hurricane, and then it weakens that storm fairly quickly from that dry air. So overall, if I had to say what kept the storm from reaching its highest ceiling, I would say the fact that this core wasn't stable enough early on in its life. Had we had a more stable, more compact, tighter core, we probably been looking at a Cat 3 hurricane yesterday making landfall in Louisiana. So that was pretty much our saving grace from seeing a much more significant, damaging hurricane. But granted, we still saw low end Cat 2 at landfall with 100-mile-an-hour winds sustained. So, I mean, we still saw a nasty storm go through southeastern Louisiana that still caused major flood problems and even tornado problems as well as hurricane force wind gusts that moved through these areas. So, overall, it was still a pretty high impact event, but it could have been even worse had that dry air not basically ruined its early part of its life. But you can see how when it formed that tighter core, notice how it took a little bit longer for that dry air to really get in there. And notice how the dry air really didn't get into the storm until it made landfall. That's when you saw a lot of that dry air hit the storm and decay it fairly quickly, which is what's happened this morning. I mean, look at it. You can kind of see how that dry air is on the backside because the whole bottom side and western side of this system is free of precipitation. So overall, this storm it didn't reach its highest ceiling. So there's that. Um, Sorry guys about that in the background. So and here's the GFS model from 060. I mean, from 12Z from the other day, Tuesday. And you know, the GFS, this model room is actually pretty accurate. It was a low end Cat 2 at landfall 979, so that's about a low end Cat 2 hurricane. But look at this favorable jet interaction it had, and this was another thing that I think actually helped help intensify this storm fast yesterday, because this storm actually dropped 10 millibars in an hour, right before it made landfall, allowing it to reach that Category 2 hurricane strength. But what you had early on in its life is a lot of dry air that kept that system pretty broad until it got closer to landfall. It created that compact, tight core. It got into those really favorable ocean waters. And then it had that favorable jet interaction, which allowed for divergence aloft. All these things allowed this to rapidly intensify as it came on the land, and then it rapidly decayed because you had wind shear over top, which pretty much decayed the storm. And you can kind of see that right here. You had that wind shear from the north, and then that pretty much decayed the storm, which allowed that core to open up. And now what you had is this huge, significant dry air plume that came in from the south side and pretty much killed this system fairly quickly. So overall, if you look at the two caveats that really kind of kept this ceiling the lowest, dry air and wind shear, particularly the dry air in the early stages of its life. I don't think models necessarily did all that well with forecasting how significant that would have been, because models are forming a tight core pretty early on in its life. So you know that played a role in that. But overall, my forecast, you know, it verified a little bit. I was definitely wrong in the intensity, at least at first, and then I had to fine tune that yesterday when I saw that, you know, the dry air was really killing this system on Tuesday. So overall, this system, you know, it didn't, you know, it verified in the fact that, you know, it was still a low end Cat 2 at landfall, which is a pretty strong hurricane, and it still caused a high impact event. So, you know, that's the overall overview of Francine and the factors that played into it. Looking at the wind history, it looks like our tropical storm force winds and our hurricane force gusts mainly occurred in southeastern Louisiana, basically in the areas that I highlighted yesterday, from about Slidell to Huma to New Orleans. So all those areas were the areas that got hit the hardest, even into southern Mississippi towards that West Gulfport area. Those areas were the areas that got hit the hardest by this system. So um, overall, guys, the system verified in the fact that it still came on shore as a Category 2, which was forecast by the National Hurricane Center. So I would say that my forecast was okay. I definitely had to do some fine tuning, and I'm still learning. And as I'm learning, I want you guys to learn with me. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and get off here, but before I do that, I want to show you this area off the coast of the Carolinas. There's a 30% chance of cyclone formation in 7 days. This could become subtropical, tropical. Regardless, this is going to bring heavy rain to the Carolinas. As early as starting tomorrow, we could see scattered rain showers. I'll probably bring you a more detailed video about this tomorrow. Granted, I really don't know if this will be anything really strong, because number one, whenever we get these systems that form off the coast, they typically come on land as either a tropical depression or a storm, and they typically bring heavier rain, and that's typically what they bring. So we'll see what this can do. But overall, guys, that's all I really got for you today. Um, um, Hope you guys in Louisiana and Mississippi stayed safe last night. So um, I'm hoping and praying for the best for you guys in your recovery efforts, and I'll be back at you guys tomorrow with another video update.